My name is Christine McGuire. I'm the Executive Director of the Diefenbunker, Canada's Cold War Museum. We acknowledge that this site was built on the traditional, unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin people. The Diefenbunker acknowledges the adverse impacts of the Cold War and its ongoing legacies to Indigenous peoples of Canada. The museum strives to move forward together with Indigenous communities in the spirit of openness and respect, and we are grateful to live, gather, and organize on this land. So right now, we are gathered 75 feet underground in an impressive 4-story facility that once was the central headquarters for the government during the Cold War and was ready at any moment for an attack. We are now a museum, a one-of-a-kind museum, and a National Historic Site. As Canada's Cold War Museum, the Diefenbunker is preserving important Canadian Cold War stories and artifacts. We value that history happened here. We value the people, past and present, that continue to interpret and preserve it. As an independent charitable organization, we promote the importance of learning from our past for present and future generations, that we may strive to build a more peaceful world for us all. I'm so pleased to be here tonight to welcome our distinguished speakers who entered the Canadian Forces during and after the Cold War, which was a period of significant change for the Canadian military. I met Dee and the Senator at the Canadian Aviation and Space Museum earlier this year for their Cold War exhibition launch. Sean and I were there. And MPP Karen McCrimmon, we've known each other a very long time, and you have been a long-time champion of the museum in your former role as MP and your current role as MPP of Canada Carleton. So after this event, Sean and I, our curator, who I'm going to be introducing in a moment, we kind of came together and said, we have to bring these remarkable women to talk about their exceptional experience. And it was actually at the same time that the announcement came out of the appointment of Lieutenant General Jenny Carignan, who is the new Chief of the Defense Staff, who is the first woman in this country's history to lead the Canadian Armed Forces. And I thought to myself, these women have paved the way for that important change. Let's just give them, I just have to feel like we have to do that. Yeah. And they have shaped and will continue to shape the path for women in the Canadian military. So I am so excited to be here tonight to learn about their experiences as trailblazers in the Canadian military. That being said, I'd like to introduce Sean Campbell, our curator, who has really curated this rich lecture series this fall and brought together these distinguished guests here tonight. Sean.
I've been doing this speaker series now for 2 years, and this is the first time it's been outside of a Zoom screen. So it's nice to see people in live space. Fantastic. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to this first installment of the Diefenbunker speaker series for our 2024 season. It is an occasion where we hear lectures and talks given by guests on Cold War themes, both within Canada and around the world. My name is Sean Campbell, and I'm the curator here at the museum. A bit of housekeeping before we begin. If you have any questions for our panelists, please hold them until the formal discussion between our panelists is concluded. We are meant to end at 8 p.m., but it is possible that the discussion will shift over that. For those present in the audience, the panel itself and not the audience will be recorded for use on our social media channels by that camera over there. So I am delighted to present this evening's distinguished panel of speakers. Our moderator for the discussion is MPP Karen McCrimmon, member of Provincial Parliament for Canada Carleton. MPP McCrimmon joined the regular force in 1980 and became an air navigator, the first female to gain such a qualification. In 1995, she was made a member of the Order of Military Merit. She did a tour of duty in Afghanistan in 2004, where she was responsible for NATO airlift coordination. After a 31-year military career, MPP McCrimmon retired as a lieutenant colonel. She's the first woman to command a Canadian Forces Air Force squadron. MPP McCrimmon previously served as the Member of Parliament for Canada Carleton from 2015 to 2021. As a Member of Parliament, she served as Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Veterans Affairs, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety, and Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transportation. She was also Chair of the Standing Committee on National Defence. The Honourable Senator Rebecca Patterson is a 34-year Canadian Armed Forces veteran. As a provider and executive health leader, she worked in military healthcare delivery, education, training, and operational and strategic planning, both at home and on international deployments. On promotion to Flag General Officer, she was the first person with a military nursing background ever to lead at that rank. Senator Patterson has led in many different domains in the Canadian Armed Forces, from serving as the defense champion for women, addressing sexual misconduct and leading culture change efforts in the forces, to commanding Canada's 14th health system, the Canadian Forces Health Service, at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. She has also been a strong advocate to transform the culture, eliminate harmful behavior, and reestablish public trust in the Canadian military. Senator Patterson was awarded the Meritorious Service Medal from the Governor-General of Canada in 2014 and was inducted as an officer in the Order of Military Merit in 2018. She is also the recipient of numerous other honors and awards, including the Ontario Premier's Award of Excellence in Health Sciences for Ontario College graduates and the Niagara College Canada Distinguished Alumni Award. Senator Patterson retired from military duty at the rank of Rear-Admiral. Senator Patterson is the first military veteran who is a woman appointed to the Senate of Canada. She serves as Deputy Leader of the Canadian Senators Group, is a member of the Senate Standing Committee on National Security, Defense, and Veterans Affairs, and is Chair of the Subcommittee on Veterans Affairs. Senator Patterson provides a voice for those who serve and have served in the Canadian Armed Forces and their families. Deanna D. Brasseur enrolled in the Royal Canadian Air Force in 1972 as an administrative clerk. Commissioned in 1973 under the Officer Candidate Training Program as an air weapons controller. When the Canadian Forces announced a trial program in 1979 to employ women in the pilot career field, Dee volunteered and successfully graduated as one of the first 3 women to earn their pilot's wings in 1981. She was the first woman jet pilot instructor assigned to 2 Canadian Forces Flying Training School in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan from 1981 to 1985, and the first woman pilot to be awarded a flight commander position as the T-33 flight commander with base flight Cold Lake, Alberta from 1986 to 88. In 1988, Brasseur was one of the first 2 women pilots selected to train as jet fighter pilots. She progressed through 419 Squadron basic fighter training on the CS-5 Freedom Fighter and 410 Squadron operational training unit to fly the CF-18 Hornet. She served as a line pilot in the squadron's plans officer with 416 Tactical Fighter Squadron, Cold Lake, Alberta, 1989 to 1990. Major Brasseur was then assigned as the first woman military aircraft accident investigator and became the senior staff officer at the Department of National Defence Headquarters, responsible for supervising all Canadian Forces jet trainers and fighter aircraft. Recognized on several occasions, Dee was honored to plant a Canadian maple tree in the 99's International Forest of Friendship in 1998, inducted into Women in Aviation Pioneer Hall of Fame in 2007, recognized by the Northern Lights Aero Foundation as a Canadian pioneer in aviation, and officially recognized by the government for her contributions in Canadian aviation. She was inducted as a member of the Order of Canada in February 1999. With such an illustrious panel of guests this evening, I believe we are in for a fascinating, insightful discussion on this topic. I will now pass the microphone to our moderator, MPP Karen McCrimmon, to begin the panel discussion.
Well, isn't that wonderful? What a great welcome. Christine and Sean and your whole team have done everything to make this evening and the entire speaker series such a success. It is renowned around the community that when this happens, people show up because it just touches people. And I appreciate and I thank you for all the work you do to bring the Diefenbunker to life for people. Because it is all about learning, right? This is part of an illustrious history of our country. And let's take the opportunity to take those lessons in and learn from them. So I really appreciate the opportunity to come and share this with you. I wanted to thank you all for showing up tonight. It matters to us that you care enough about your Canadian forces, you care enough about the people who have served, you care enough about your country to come out tonight and learn. You could be sitting on a patio somewhere, but here you are, 70 feet underground with us, and we appreciate it very, very much. Thank you, all three of us. Thank you for caring enough to be here with us tonight. So, with that, we were just comparing notes. A 34-year veteran, a 33-year veteran. I'm the youngster at a 31-year veteran. So someone said to me, you add that all up, that's 98 years of military experience. I'm not...
We joined very young.
Exactly. But we've been friends for a long time. Dee and I have known, we've figured it out. We met in Winnipeg on the base when I was doing my navigator training, and Dee had just finished her fighter training, or her pilot training, wings training. And so that was in 1981. 40, really, come on. It can't be 43 years ago. Right? Rebecca, I have known more recently. And yet there were times, and especially when I needed advice when I was chair of the National Defense Committee, and we were dealing with some very serious issues coming up about sexual misconduct in the military and what had happened and stuff. And I needed advice that I could trust. I needed someone that I could bounce things off and someone nonpartisan, true, because what I wanted is I wanted to make sure that it mattered. I didn't want to come up with something that would just not end up helping in the long term. We wanted to make sure we could come up with something that made a difference over the course of history. And I think we tried really hard. And there was lots of games playing, lots of people that didn't want to come up with something. But now, thanks to another friend of mine who's in the audience tonight, where's Karen Breek?
She's right there trying to...
Where is she? Hiding? Right there. She has taken the work that we started and actually brought it to the floor at Parliament. And so helped create a report that now the government needs to react to, needs to provide a response to. So, but it's right what you said, Sean and Christine. We've been working at this since, when did you start, 1972?
Long time ago.
72? I was 75, and Rebecca, you were in the 80s. 89. So we have been working at this for a long, long time. But it's what it takes is a team. And it takes people that keep on bringing up the subject and demanding better. And I think we're going to get there. We've made pretty significant progress. There's more to do, mind you, but we've made progress. And thanks to my colleagues here. So I'm going to start it off really kind of easy. But I think when I look at the Diefenbunker, I kind of think I look for opportunities to learn. I love that. That's what life is all about. If you're learning something new every day, life is good. Life is exciting. So I love to come out and learn something new. And I think when I look around at you, I think you must be similar kind of people. So we kind of crafted some thought-provoking questions that actually might help us all learn something. So I'm going to get it. Did you guys want to say anything before we started? I think Sean did a wonderful job on those introductions.
I think that's good.
We're good? Yeah. We can just jump right in?
Let's go for it.
Okay, hey, let's go for it. Okay, question number one. Full of handles. All right. So what I think I would like to know is what in your background actually prepared you for the roles you ended up playing in the CAF? What gave you the strength of purpose and the commitment to actually do what the Canadian Forces asked you to do? Do you want to start, Rebecca?
Sure. So I'm actually a child of the Cold War. Both my parents were born during World War II, and so they were the children of warriors. And so my dad and mom were both in the Navy when they met, the Royal Navy and the Royal Canadian Navy. So as we grew up and moved back and forth, it was always part of our life. And the Cold War was something, even as little kids, everywhere we moved across this country, we knew about duck and cover. I mean, who can relate to that? I said, well, we know we're talking about duck and cover. You know, that the Cold War was a war. We were under no illusions. And part of that, as a child who moved all the time, was looking for purpose and connection. And yeah, I never really felt that confident, but I was like, oh yeah, let me see what I can do. And finally, we ended up in Thunder Bay, Ontario. And my dad was able to get back into shipping. He was a stoker on submarines, and then finished his chief's tickets while we're in northern Manitoba. And we hit Thunder Bay, Ontario, and he said, I'm going to join the Naval Reserves again. And we're like, ooh, and I'm like, oh, he says, you can go to Navy League. I'm like, yes. I could have gone to gymnastics or Navy League, and I picked Navy League. Anyway, so I did Navy League and Sea Cadets, and I loved it. I felt that I fit. I felt service to Canada and dedication. And it also provided a connection because, yeah, you know, we did not stop moving. We kept moving, and we ended up in St. Catharines, Ontario. And a rolling stone gathers no moss was always my father, and that was me. How far can I reach? How far can I go? How can I be me? And anyway, I went off to Australia as an exchange student when I was 17, 18 years old, because that's far away, right? And I went far away, and I came back, and of course, Ontario had 13 grades at that point, and Australia had a different school year. And I came back, and I was too mature to hang around grade 12 and half. So I chose to go to college, and my intent actually was to go and be a non-governmental organization and save people in Africa. And but the military always beckoned. And so I went to the recruiting center before I went to nursing school, and I said, and remember this is before 1989, I said, I want to join the Navy and go on ships. And they said, you can be a nurse. And I said, okay, I can be a nurse. So off I tootled, and I got myself into college, and that was Niagara College, and I did my 3-year nursing diploma, and I went back to the recruiting center and I said, I want to be a naval warfare officer. I point because we have one in the room. I want to be a naval warfare officer, and they said, you can be a nurse. So off I go, and obviously I sit in front of you as a senator, so I think it was the right decision. But I went off to basic training, and I was also joining at a time that was a watershed moment in the Canadian Armed Forces, and this is a legacy of the Cold War. For women, remember, women weren't even people until 1929. Keep that in mind. We still had provinces that didn't let you vote provincially until 73, I think, Quebec was the last one in there. And it took to 1989 to say, you know what, we tried, and it's discriminatory to keep women out of all occupations. So I literally joined the month that all occupations minus submarines were open to members. And so I went in there carrying my little vaccine, because as a critical care nurse, I worked civilian, thinking, well, I have to have my second shot. And I'm the only clown who's ever taken vaccines to basic training. Trust me, they get you on every arm and both butt cheeks. And there I was. And then I was this atypical nurse going through. And I can tell you, I did basic training with everybody else. And I was ready for it, and I know it was my cadet background, my parents' desire to serve, to have a sense of service, and my understanding that even when it got really unpleasant, it was actually, it would pass. They weren't going to do anything that was going to kill me, and guess what? They didn't. So that's kind of what I think brought me to where I am.
Okay, that's awesome. How about it,
And
Dee?
weird. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was born into the Cold War too. Just up the road in Pembroke. My parents were stationed at Foymount at the time. My mom had thought she'd died and gone to heaven because it was like 1952, and Foymount had just opened up as a base, and there was a brand spanking new PMQ. Never been lived in. Like, she was in heaven. So I got born there, and my brother got born there, and then in 1955, just after he got born in April, off to Montepika, Quebec, which was another radar station.
So like in the old days, the early Cold War, we had an awful lot of military and an awful lot of bases. And on average, generally, every 2 or 3 years, you made a move. It was for career predominantly, because you're getting more experience. As soon as you get promoted, you change your mess, whether it's the junior ranks mess to the sergeant's mess to the warrant officer and sergeants to the officer's mess, and you couldn't be a corporal in the sergeant's mess. So when you got promoted, you moved. And it's like you can't go back into the office today when yesterday you were the janitor and today you're the boss, because everybody's going, what the hell happened there? So you moved. You moved for career and you moved for job enhancement and more learning. So by the time I was 17 years old, I had gone to 10 different schools and lived in 9 different provinces. So that was a lot of moving for a young kid. And you know, it depends on how that situation is structured for you as a kid. When I hear about, COVID kids, oh my God. And I think, what? Like every 2 years, you pull up your whole roots, leave all your friends behind, and go to somewhere else. And we were lucky as kids, because my parents would, for the first half of the drive, away from the old place, oh, you remember when, remember that fun we had there, and it was all good memories. And almost at the halfway point on the road, you say, well, you know what, the new place has, a swimming pool, a bowling alley, I bet they have, and so now you're looking forward to going to the new place. So for me, probably the worst part was going from Gander to Montana. Because as soon as I got in the school bus and somebody says, where are y'all from? And I said, Newfoundland. They go, where's that? Y'all are Canadian. Yeah, all of me is. It was just an accent thing, but it's so broadening to have a big picture perspective. Like back in 1995, when we had that the Quebec referendum challenge, I was going to call up Mr. Chrétien and say, yo, dude, I have the solution to the problem. In Canada, if you pass a law that says every 3 years, everybody has to move over one province, within 2 or 3 moves, everybody's going to like everybody and realize that, there's good points, bad points, and points for improvement. Doesn't matter where you go. So I joined. I was in Alberta, and I went down to Cornwallis for basic training. I joined because I knew military. I knew that way of life. It was familiar to me. I enjoyed the people, that feeling of camaraderie and morale, esprit de corps. You've got good friends, and maybe sometimes you went from one base, and 2 or 3 postings later, you see them again, and you go, oh my God, it's great. So I joined basic, and I went to the recruiting center in Calgary, and they said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a phys ed instructor. And they said, well, you can't. I said, what do you mean you can't? I was in university for education, going to be phys ed. Well, no, you have finance, admin, supply. They go, duh. Well, finance, forget it. I can't do math. Supply is like handing out shorts and socks and underwear to the troops. And I go, duh. And admin is like being a secretary. And I said, well, I know how to type. I'll take that job. And sure enough, my first job was in Winnipeg in the dental clinic, typing on a World War II issue Underwood manual typewriter. Yep. Fingers on the home row. Tick, 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 bing. I'm telling you, and I had been practicing on electric, so the first page I typed, I looked like, it's blank. Oh. And I had to call, in those days, we had to go for every member of the military had an annual dental checkup. And that was published in routine orders. And not everybody was, first of the month calling us for an appointment. So me, I had to call them, right? Over 100 people a month, you have to call on the telephone. I have this permanent circle on my finger. But anyway, when they said, you could apply for your commission, and I go, well, oh, that'd be good. I wanted air traffic control. I didn't work in the tower and stuff. They said, well, you got air weapons. I go, what the hell is that? Well, you go underground, huh? And you control fighter aircraft. You work with radar. And I remember going to a radar site with my dad and seeing a circle with a green thing going around. And I went, oh, that'd be interesting.
What did I know?
So I picked it, and I ended up in North Bay Underground in the middle of the Cold War, going, whoa, this is cool. You know, it was, for me, I was raised with a pride in Canada. We never passed a signpost anywhere from St. John's, Newfoundland to Victoria that was a historic. We didn't stop and read it and learn about the country all the way across. And my dad was from Dawson City, Yukon. My mom was from Cape Breton, Nova Scotia.
Oh,
And they both met in PEI and married, and all 3 kids were born in Ontario. So, and I've been and live in every province, and I love this country. And service it gives me a sense of pride to serve. So that's how I ended up.
Oh, isn't that awesome? And,
Yeah.
and you know, to hear you both talk about your experiences in the military and what it meant to you, right now, you are both providing such leadership. Your whole lives you provided leadership in so many different ways. So I'd like to, I'm sorry, I'm being selfish here. I really want to understand, I want to know your perspectives about leadership in general, maybe leadership in the CAF or management. Tell us what your thoughts are with the leadership that you experienced in the CAF and how it spoke or did not speak to you. Do you want to start? Yeah.
So it was, like I said, an interesting journey for me. And being in health services, we had a larger component of women. And I will talk about this through a gendered lens because that's my experience. And the other part about my experience is I experienced this in an occupation that's as old as Canada is in conflict. The first nurses in uniform went to the Northwest event in 1885, 7, as I look at Karen, she always helps me out there, 85, and
Yeah.
they actually had the names of them, and I ended up in what is really one of the few occupations that women consistently did even after wars.
Yeah.
And so I guess when I looked at leadership, I came from a civilian setting. I worked as a civilian critical care nurse for a couple of years and went into the military, you know, a cute little uniform, maybe wear some goofy little hat at National Defense Medical Center. It's okay, I got over it. But what I ended up experiencing is that I actually was mentored. So the one thing about traditional occupation for women, we tend to eat our own, and particularly in nursing. And I say that for anybody who comes from STEM or healthcare, women often get crunched up by other women, and that is something when you're in a culture that's not your own. But for some reason, the Cold War warriors who were nurses decided that they were going to try and provide mentorship to a small group of us. And yeah, I didn't know that's what was happening. But what they actually tried to do is help guide us through our career. And I mean, I think of Bev Anderson. She retired as a colonel, Bev Anderson. I mean, they are the trailblazers. I stood on their shoulders, and we must never forget that. To be married, to have children, unheard of. I was the generation that really started that. I mean, it sounds crazy. You know, my son's 23, my daughter's 25. Think about that. And so the leadership I saw within health services in nursing was very much, we had a generation that had survived the Cold War and decided that there was a greater role in leadership for women. Now, healthcare, as you know, is people-centric. And there were certain bad words, caring, bad in the military at that time, right? You know, kindness, you know, can't be talking about that. But you can be fair and firm and kind altogether, and that's what they taught me. And so because I joined as the Cold War was ending, within 2 years of my career, the war fell. I remember waking up and going to National Defense Medical Center. I was a critical care nurse there, and the Cold War had ended, and all I remember was thinking, oh my God, my life just changed. And because of how I was brought up. And then, of course, what we started to see was rapid evolution, and health services started to be deployed internationally. And I went to Gulf War I. I use that because most people understand what we're talking about, the Persian Gulf conflict in jeepers, when was that, 91? 91, had to think about it. And of course, there was this very traditional Cold War, post-Korea attitude about where women, nurses in particular, would be. And I was with a field hospital where there were 43 nurses. We were the largest part of the field hospital. And what we ended up doing by default was taking our leadership roles, you know, head nurse, et cetera, becoming what was really known as a leadership. And when there is a void, nurses will fill it, especially in leadership. So as time rapidly evolved, I came back from Gulf War I, and then holy heck, did it hit the fan. I remember the Balkans, anyone? Bueller? Do you remember Somalia, Rwanda? So I actually was in Somalia with the Canadian Airborne Regiment. I was one of 7 women and about 2,000 men there. And of course, the Airborne Regiment, women? What the heck? But I was a nurse, so I was able to hide behind that. But while there were certainly unique leadership styles there, I can tell you it was the first time I actually saw airborne soldiers, even though it was the early 90s, actually display some of the characteristics that we now know as character-based leadership: firm, fair, kind, and directive rather than destructive, which had been many people's experience up to then. And anyway, it started to be a real marker of my career. And so as a nurse, I was in a unique position that as an officer, I had to get tapped, you know, oh, you're going to try, you're going to be a leader, you're going to be whatever. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'll give that a try. What is that? And, but the one thing that I did have that probably my pilot friends who were women, or as combat arms, more women were going to combat arms, is there were no expectations of me. Holy mackerel, when you take expectations off of people, you can be yourself. Was it hard? Oh, heck yes. But at the same time, I think my privileged position as a nurse, which sure didn't feel like it sometimes, even my physician friends went to hell and back as women, and I know that. But as a nurse, I was given grace, I was given mentorship. I mean, I obviously wasn't, you know, a danger to them, and I knew how to be a soldier. Even though I was a sailor, I knew how to be a soldier. And yeah, so I was able to actually create mentors throughout my career, always having that core of those nursing mentors I told you about. And as my career continued to advance, because I was never in competition to be Chief of Defence Staff, holy heck, I was just one of the group, and I have always found leaders, even as we were going through the different dark ages through my 34-year career, right up until I retired in December the 10th, 2023, is that there's always been a core, life's a bell curve, most people fit in there, that really wanted to create team, that really knew that the power of the military rested in the us, the we, and not just the I. Yes, we all know to this day, men and women, there are people who are there for the power. But I can tell you there has always been a hardcore in military leadership that I was privileged to be able to work with, be mentored by, that really wanted to do the very best by the people who served, who would die for each other. And I mean that because, of course, right up through the Afghanistan years, et cetera, and would do anything for their families that have created family, which is what Dee was talking about. So that's how I've seen leadership evolve, and I know we're going to talk more about that later, but I consider it a great privilege because as Canadians, you look to us to manage violence on your behalf. There is no one else that does that. Yes, the police do at times, but the only people in Canada who have unlimited liability, meaning you can send us to our deaths, are your members of the Canadian Armed Forces. And therefore, it creates a unique environment amongst us. Do we always need to continue to improve? Life is evergreen, and the answer is yes. But at the same time, you have a group of Canadians, people of all genders, who want to make things the best they can for each other and serve you the best they can. Obviously, I'm terribly proud of the forces. Back over to Dee, on to you.
Awesome. On to Dee.
Yeah. Couldn't lead a one-man rush to a two-hole shitter. So,
Oh, yes, you could.
That's what we used to say when you have the new guys that are still learning, right? So, okay. So my first, I would say, I don't know, team was always me. I played basketball, I played baseball, and I preferred team sports to tennis sports. When I was coming out of high school in Montana, I could have gone to the Montana State tennis tournament or the baseball tournament. I said, as my team, I can't leave my team just for individual glory. So I've always preferred team kind of sports. And so then I get in the military, and in basic training, it's all team. You know, we sang as a group of girls, you know. You want to get, you ought to get home when you left. You're right, you ought to get home. And all the way for breakfast and all the way back from breakfast, and except for when we went by the commanding officer's house, and then we didn't sing. So the team building and the concept of team came early. And maybe you were called out to be the duty person that day, so you were just outside the team and you called the cadence. Left, right, left, right. So in your very basic introduction to the military life, you get an opportunity to be a follower and a leader. And I hold that you can't be a leader unless you know how to follow. Okay? So when you come from that perspective, when you're the leader, now you've got to think about your followers. And you know what it's like to be a follower behind a leader who doesn't think about you. So that's the important part that was always drilled into me is your people are your most important resource. You have to look after your team. If you look after your team will look after you. When I got to officers training, I remember Bernie Doherty. Bernie was a captain coming out of the Cold War days when we still have women in the RCF who were in air weapons control, because from 1963 to 1973, women weren't allowed in that trade any longer, fighter comptroller. But Bertie came out of that one and she went into, I think it was Perse, but she was now teaching in basic officers training. And I remember her standing up in class saying, ladies, she said, you are officers first. She said, it is not your job to be popular. It is your duty to make decisions. Whether people like it or not, you have to be the leader, the officer, to stand up in front of those people. And if you have to say, up and over the ridge on the trench, you make that decision. There are no friends here. We're a team. Everybody on the team has a job, and that's what's important, is you do your job. If you're the leader, you have to lead. There's no, oh yeah, but that's my friend, I'll take them out of trouble. No, we're all in this together. Other leading, I was I got 3 planes flying off of me. As a flight lead, a 4-plane lead, you're in jets, you're doing 500 miles an hour, and you better be good at what you're doing because you're leading 3 others. And all they're doing is looking at you. So they don't hit you. We hope. So you got to be a good leader. It's not leading is people, and it's also machines. It's also big picture, it's organization. So it's not just people, it's the whole picture. It's the organization. It's like family. The cat, the dog, the kids, the husband, the wife. It's big picture. And leading is hard because you're the one standing up there all by your lonesome. And you have to tell the whole room full of people, this is not going to be fun, but we're going to be here till midnight. And you got to be willing to take it. And if you're doing it correctly, you say, listen, you got to communicate why it is we're doing what we're doing so that the people that you're leading buy in and they've got your back and they go, yo, boss, we got to be here till midnight. Who's got a deck of cards? You know, let's make the best of the situation. So that's being a good leader and follower all in one bundle, and that's what I learned.
Okay. I think that's awesome. I love that idea. I mean, what you said, like, the leader serves the team. The team doesn't exist to serve the leader, okay? The leader serves the team, and that's how you bring out the best of people, and I really appreciate that. So let's move a little bit towards learning. And when I listen to the two of you, I know that your experience in the Canadian Forces has spanned decades, right? And I'd like to know from your perspective, what changes have you, there was a reason why you joined the Canadian Forces. There was a reason why I joined the Canadian Forces. But what changes have you seen in the risks, in the threats that Canada is facing today? How have things changed from the Cold War going forward? I'll let Dee start with this one.
Yeah, well, I joined in 1972. We were still heavy duty in the Cold War. We still practiced going to shelter. We each were issued a radiation dosimeter that would register your exposure to radiation. Air raid siren would go off and you'd play the game for real. Like in the middle of the night, get called in out of your bed and we're playing it for real. The missiles are coming over the horizon. But we were in North America and our threat was Russia. Easy. One threat. And we had our cousins to the south to help us in the defense of that threat, plus our European neighbors. So it was relatively simple. When the Cold War ended in 1989, fast forward 20 years of career, I had gone from controlling fighter aircraft to flying fighter aircraft, and I was in Europe with our squadron. We were to back up our Canadian squadron is in Europe. We had come back, and it wasn't a week, 2 weeks after we'd come back. We had taken a bus trip as a squadron to the wall, to the border, to see the towers and see the Soviet guards and see the moats and the dogs and going like, ew, this is what we're fighting for. This is why we're doing what we're doing. This is real stuff, man. We get home and 10 days later, it's pieces broken out all over. Yeah, okay. And since then, it's 360 degrees of threat. Because there's no longer one threat in Russia. You've got China threat, North Korea threat, Iran threat, and little pockets of wars all over that we never had before. When you have two strong powers, separate everybody. You're under my umbrella or you're my umbrella. Keep everybody in line. As soon as you take that off, it's like a free-for-all. It's like you kicked an anthill. Watch what happens. So it's multi-dimensional now. It's political, it's economic, it's electric, computers, you know. Somebody's going to pull the plug on our computers and we're screwed. If we can't pay at the cash, get bank money, pump gas, who wins?
Okay, I'm scared now.
Don't be scared. We're old enough to know how to do it manually.
Yeah, we'll be fine.
Ka-ching, ka-ching.
Okay, Rebecca.
So what I'm actually going to do is pull that thread, because I think we need to be really aware that democratic nations go through ebbs and flows like it's tides, right? If you think about as we went through the Cold War, it was cold because it worked on deterrence rather than kinetic impact, right? Yes, we learned about the Russian flu and falling off the Soviet flu, you know, they're very good. There was a lot of espionage and other ways of getting into democratic nations. I mean, we tended to be on the defensive. And remember why NATO exists. It's about deterrence. It's about deterrence. It's not offensive. It's defensive deterrence and economic development, which was kind of where I'm going to pull what Dee has put down now. And when you have one superpower in this world, it's a pretty scary thing. Any imbalance in power, humans tend to need the balance, right? If everybody was peace-loving, then we wouldn't well, we wouldn't be human, we'd be robots. So what we know has happened with the end of the Cold War, the wholesale decimation of the Canadian Armed Forces, which is what I did experience. I worked at National Defence Medical Centre. I am not saying we need hospitals, but Karen, I don't know if you remember this, but it was almost like people were getting fired left, right, and center. Public servants with reverse order of merit fired. We were kicking people out of the military. We got rid of whole occupations. I'm using just us. Remember, they also got rid of Air Force stuff and Navy stuff and Army stuff. And we just stopped investing in the military. We didn't recruit for 5 years. What on God's green earth were they thinking? We have been paying for that deficit up to now. So what has happened is, with a superpower and the prosperity that came out of World War I and World War II and through the Cold War years, the rapid development in democracies and human rights and how women could, vote and prosperity. Think of all the things that grew in Ottawa during that time, including this location. And then we had it's over. Because unfortunately, one of the risks of democracy is one and done. Well, we're done. When in human history has that ever been the case? Right? That's it. Peace and war are on a spectrum, and it's forever sliding. But what has changed so dramatically is during those prosperous periods, as our Cold War military has found out, is that technological advances with bureaucracy is the antithesis to technological advancements. It is meant to slow down and break and create silos, not maliciously, but it's a fact. And so where we have got to now with the hollowing out of the Canadian Armed Forces, divesting of people and capabilities in terms of everything. Remember, they're trying to get rid of the tanks, and then boom, there goes Afghanistan. We kept the tanks. Oh, then we bought the Chinooks back from the Dutch. And, oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
There is no true ill intent, because this is about the Canadian people and what Canadian people want. But I need you to be really aware that we are at war now. And when the Chief of Defence Staff or the ministers or the academics talk about the existential crisis against us, warfare is not necessarily defending your borders anymore. This is where I talk about Dee when she talks about economic stuff like that. The whole domain of human security is really important, because I can reach somebody in the backwoods of Iqaluit, to spread mis and disinformation or cognitive. It's a type of cognitive warfare. And so this is what we're up against. And we know that yesterday, Putin has threatened nuclear. We know what Iran is doing. We know what North Korea is doing. And here's Canada going, don't worry, we're next door to the US. Okay, so where are we today? So we have COVID brought some unique things. It really identified disparities between Canadians, haves, have-nots, choice, right? We know that. I know you're going to ask the question about the flag, and I think it's a great way of ending it. But with the Canadian Armed Forces, as we kept shrinking, and it's not a modern thing to do is join the military, and we're not allowed to advertise, we're not allowed to do this, and you're all a bunch of rapists, and you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And so it leads us to where we are today. Remember, if you're on the offensive, it is far easier to be on the offensive than the defensive. And if I was to say to you right off the top, can you do BRIC? Which is, you've got your North Koreas and your Irans and your Russias and some of the other, we won't mention them because I know someone might hear this, but we have a group of countries who are fundamentally against who we are. The most strongest thing that we have in the world is democracy. The most successful countries that look after people, grosso modo, not perfectly, are democracies. But they're also the most fragile, because this is where we go into security of today. We do have to defend our borders. In coalitions like NATO, the most successful military alliance there ever has been, by living next to the United States. Remember, not only are they our neighbor to protect us, they're the biggest breaking target in the world. Wait, we're the fallout zone. Iron Curtain, anyone? So I think what we have to think about, and every single one of you votes, and you listen, But what we can't do is neglect diplomacy, because remember we talked about spectrum. We cannot neglect our militaries. We have to expect our leaders in government to tell us that if you want a cheaper loaf of bread, because we do, we need to live somewhere, we need to have homes, we need to have global security. Because the one thing we know in modern warfare, it is inextricably linked to Russia sowing seeds of dis and misinformation, the Middle East getting bombed into oblivion, Ukraine being destroyed, being allowed to be destroyed. It's a test for the rest of us and for democracy. So I am just giving you this. Now, what can we do so we're not afraid? I think the best thing that we can do is realize that this is the new equivalent to a Cold War. This is Rebecca saying this, but I'm sure there'll be academics that back me up. It has the same, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. We have saber rattling in the terms of nuclear deterrence. We have different nefarious states poking into our social media, trying to discredit things that we value in Canada, such as healthcare. Find the first anti-vaxxer, bet they weren't a Canadian. Okay? And so what I hope that we can do as Canadians together and as your leaders, provincially, federally, and influencey, is that we need to be able to we need to be able to listen to what's going on and figure out how we can best share. Remember, we're stronger as a team, we're stronger as democracy. What we can do a little bit without, so someone can have a little bit more, that we can create a safe economy, a safe healthcare, a safe digital infrastructure, a strong military. It doesn't have to be huge, just needs to be strong, a strong international partner. And demand that of your leaders, and expect that when your chief of defense staff tells you that, oh my gosh, we need submarines now. Gosh, that's expensive. Oh my gosh, that's expensive. But I'm going to go back to your final point. We are safe, and we are safe, and we are secure. And that is because we are part of an alliance. But I think that we need to get up there and we need to pull our weight. And we need to remember that every inch of ice that melts, because climate change is part of security. Russia gets closer and closer. China gets tries to create the Northwest Passage of their own making, and that's fine. That's not a judgment, it's a statement. But I think that we must always remember who our friends are and who our enemies are, and at the end of the day, who we have is each other and Canada. So get out there, vote. There we go. I'm nonpartisan, I promise you that. And know that the men and women, people of all genders of the Canadian Armed Forces are willing, when push comes to shove and it gets really bad, they will be there for you. And that's kind of, I think, the pride that we have in our service now. And I'm going to shut up now for your old. Remember, we're in one of the safest places in Ottawa right now, so you're good.
Bring it on, bring it on.
You know what I heard from both of you is the pride in this country. That comes loud and clear. I just wish people knew how lucky we were, right? I wish more people understood just how lucky we are to live in this country. So, yeah, thank you. Yes, exactly. So what I have my own kind of experience, the pride in this country. But I want to give you the chance. We'll have to make this quick because we are running out of time. Hard to believe this has flown by like this. Tell me what the Canadian flag means to you. Tell me a story of when it is spoken to you. Rebecca, you want to start?
I was that tall. No.
Okay, go for it, Dee.
Yeah, I got back down there. Yeah. Centralia, Ontario, was just outside London. Was Royal Canadian Air Force Station, Centralia, where we were training ab initio pilots on Harvards and Chipmunks. 1963, I went there as a 10-year-old kid. And I used to ride my bike out to the end of the runway, lean up against the fence and watch the little chipmunks fly in over till I almost fell over, and then I turn around and watch them land and go, boys are so lucky they get to do that. If they let girls do that, I would like to do that. Okay, fast forward a whole bunch of years, and I'm going to Grand Bend to the air show to talk to 750 kids, grade 5 to 7, in the rec center on that base, which has been closed for 30 years, but it still exists, the rec center, because now it's part of the community, to tell them, you know, they can be all they want to be when they grow up. I'm going, holy shit, I walked into the gym and went, it's like, warp time zone, right? Earlier in the day, I'd been in the tower. And I'm in the tower, and I'm looking out at the airport, and I'm going, oh, my God. That's the road. The road is still here. The one I used to stand there 35 years ago and watch planes come in to land here. And my brain is going back 35 years, watching the chipmunks land, seeing the tower, and now I'm back in the tower looking at the road, and I'm going like, that's freaking amazing. And just at that moment, the airplane coming in on approach for the air show was the F-18. Nice. And I admit openly, I just started bawling. I had to go out of the tower so the guys wouldn't see me. But I'm going, I can't believe that. I'm going like, thank you, God. Like, from your 10-year-old dream to your reality. And I thought to myself, I was like, you know, only in Canada. Because we were the first country to allow our women to fly fighters. And I thought, you know, this for me, the opportunity to serve my country and fly fighters doing it, I couldn't ask for more, you know? So I go back to Centralia on that February day when I was in grade 7, and it was cold. And I remember Mr. McCarroll, the principal, down came the flag and up went the maple leaf. And I cried. And I went, that's our flag! That's our new flag! And when we went to Gander, Newfoundland 2 years later, me and Helen, we for the school newspaper wrote the article on the Canadian flag, what the red meant on either side from sea to sea, purity, 10 maple leaf spots for all the provinces and the territories. And it was like, first day on parade, we weren't even parading, we were just observing in Cornwallis. When they played the Canadian national anthem and the flag goes up, I cried every goddamn time that flag goes up. I cry because I'm so proud. We have so much more to be thankful for. If we spend as much time being thankful and grateful as we do bitching, moaning, and complaining and groaning, it'd be okay. We'd be good.
Yes, we do.
So I have to see if I can choke my way through this because it's actually a really good build on this. The Canadian flag is so recognizable. And when you're in the military, it's who you are first and foremost. You're a Canadian from Alberta, you're a Canadian from Ontario. And what that flag means around the world when people see it, whether it is, you know, countries that we go to, I'll use Somalia, or I'll use Afghanistan, Canada, Canada, Canada. Canada, that's who we were, Canada, 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 meaning hope, you have something for me, but not in a negative way. And I think the other thing is it is a sign of pride for soldiers, sailors, and aviators. Every time that red and white maple leaf goes up, it's who we are, we are Canada. It sounds very corny, I'm quite patriotic, being born in England, but I am very patriotic. And observations over time, find an individual meal pack, IMP, with a Canadian maple leaf on it. You can get a lot for those suckers. All right? How they know it's got the maple leaf on it. Local nationals have seen us in some pretty terrible places on this earth. Canada, Canada, Canada. Can I come there? Your Canadian soldiers, sailors, and aviators are at the front line of that. Canadian soldiers who've been injured, and I'll use Afghanistan right now. Now, Karen, you can come and slap me one or hug me, whichever you wish to do it. You would be gobsmacked that an injured Canadian soldier, as profoundly injured as some of them were, if they hit the Roll 3 medical facility in Kandahar and they could look up and see a Canadian flag, they relaxed. Even if they died, they relaxed. Yeah, I mean it. I've watched my American counterparts and my teammates. I had a Canada, US team when I was in Afghanistan doing the mentorship program in the National Military Hospital of the Afghan National Army. And the Americans used to stick the little maple leaf under there, because you all wear your insignia, because they were so proud to be part of our team. It's about connection, teamship, unique leadership. And I think most profoundly is the great respect that your Canadian Armed Forces and your veterans have for that flag and all it represents. You know, we still identify World War I soldiers because they have a maple leaf near their body. And I'm going to talk about this from the human perspective. We've had Canadians come home under flags. We've had families given flags. So when we see people disrespect that flag, especially during the convoy, I'm terribly sorry if you believe in it, wearing it upside down, using foul words, etc., etc. That is a disgrace to every Canadian who gave them the right to hoist that flag and have that word to say. And in my current job as a senator, I continue to serve. It's not a job. Sorry to my team who are here. You know, I continue to serve Canada. I continue to serve you in this defense thing. And my first year in the Senate, I got to tell you, there aren't many people downtown at around midnight, especially when the snow is flying horizontal and you have to try and get back to your office. But did you know that, you know, the center block, the Canadian flags are always lit up, and it was like really exhausting. And I'd listen to this debate. I had no idea what they were talking about. I know nothing about rotten fruit, okay? Just know nothing. And I was walking back, and I looked up, and this is not a word of a lie, and the light was shining on that Canadian flag. It's freezing cold because we're Canada. And the wind is whipping through, and it's blowing straight out. And all I think of is, I work for that, which means the people. There's my emotional moment. So the Canadian flag, I think for members of your Canadian Armed Forces and your veterans community, it comes to symbolize, and we treat it with respect. And we always hope that that's how Canadians will see it. And if you see us when someone says, you know, we're going to defend your freedoms and your rights. No, I defend your freedoms and your rights, as does everybody else who signed on the dotted line. So needless to say, red and white is my favorite colors. I am from nowhere, but I am from Canada. And every time I landed, coming back from overseas, whether it was on deployment and you're dirty and exhausted and tired, because remember, there's no first class when you're in the military. It's probably with your kit stuck between your legs for 12 hours on an aircraft. But every time I landed and I saw those potholes and that dirty snow melting down, and you know, you're super tired, all I could go was just like that soldier who was injured. I just went, I'm home. Canada.
Yeah. Oh, that was awesome. Thank you. Yeah. You mentioned the word freedom. And I think that's another word that's kind of been used or misused, I think, in political discourse, I would say. Who wants to talk about that?
Ooh,
Anybody?
I'm passionate about that one.
I know, having done a bunch of work, my highest personal value in my life is freedom, okay? And my wheels, my car, is that representation of that highest value. Because that means I can go when I want to and come when I want to and do whatever I want to. When I have my car, I have freedom. On the other hand, I'm going like, okay, I did a fair bit of motivational speaking, and I talked to a bunch of kids, high schools, university about it. And I remember I was working an event in Windsor, grades 5 to 7 again. The worst group in the entire world to have to talk to. Oh my God, because you got just coming into puberty and those who think they should be adults. And you try and keep that gaggle together in one type of language use. Okay, so we're all done. And they're all excited about the presentation, so we have questions. Yeah, the question. Did you ever kill anybody?
That's a favorite question. As a nurse,
And
I
I
hope to say
said,
no.
fortunately, no. And like 500 students going, oh. Well, I tell you what. Sometimes I can be tactful and I can be diplomatic when I need to be. And that particular day, I didn't give a flying fart about the teachers in the back of the room. But I stood up there and took on my leadership role and went, hey, neighbors. I said, have you ever killed anybody? Do you know what it's like to kill anybody? That person sitting next to you, is that your friend? Is that your buddy? I said, how would you like to pick up body parts? You know, blood, guts, brains, bones. Do you know what it smells like for a dead body? It smells like farts, burp, hiccup, throw up, and everything else all in one, and you got to pick that up. I said, no, we don't kill people. I said, we fight for freedom. We fight for peace. We have an extremely good military up until just after the Cold War. From the Second World War and the Korean War, we didn't have any wars. We're pretty goddamn good at what we do. Preserving peace, diplomacy, deterrence, national sovereignty. I said, you're a winner if you don't kill somebody. You could have heard a pin drop. And afterwards, I had to talk to teachers. I hope it was okay. Like, the whole goddamn school will be traumatized because, you know, I created this horrible picture for them. I said, I'm going to call a spade, sorry, you know.
Rebecca, you want to have a few minutes? And then we got to...
And then I'm actually going to ask Karen to answer the same
Yeah.
question, because I think it's really important. So we hear a lot about my rights, freedom. Yeah, all of those things are important, but I'm going to go back to my comments on democracy. Like in the military, even in cadets, the junior cadet league, you're talking about what it means to be a citizen. And while we have rights, we have obligations and responsibilities to each other, to our country, and that's what gives you rights and freedoms. Freedoms are not free, and that sounds, gosh, that's corny, but that's what it is. It's not free, and I think we may have lost sight. And because in a current world, it may not be what you want, the underlying principle in Canada is this is about the greatest good for the greatest many. This is about us, not I. And there are times when me, does need to come to the front. So when we use, well, that's against my freedoms, well, think about that. What does that mean? So it's become a catchphrase, you know, rather than what it is actually supposed to represent. And I think this is where you can get a disconnect from the members in the Canadian Armed Forces and sometimes the public who are out there screaming in their face, oh, by the way, I was called a anti-feminist baby killer.
You weren't?
Me, after I'd just been to a gender apartheid thing for Afghan women on the way to speak at a International Women's Day, and I'm like, if only you knew. But anyway, when we talk about having my freedom, I have this huge urge because I work with the people who will give up their right to life so you can have the right to choose, the right to live how you want, but there are compromises that come with it. So my take-home message really is with my freedom is about your rights, but it's about your obligations and your responsibilities to each other and to that little red and white. And I'm kind of hoping that, especially in our current world, whether it's provincially or federally, is that the one way we can stop losing sight of capital F, freedom, my noun, freedom, is that we start tying it in with civility, and that Canadians are supposed to be known as polite and respectful around the world. And I think that if we are able to maintain that core, you can be who you like. That's your right to be whom you like. How you act is what we get you on. But if we can always keep that bell curve, that center of mass, civil, even if we can have respectful disagreements in there, that we can then truly say, I have freedoms. So I do worry about that, but our military, they live it every day. So, sorry, I don't mean to point at you, Sean. He's a new veteran, okay? We now work together, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And I think you're exactly right. I mean, we should emulate the behavior that we want, right? And I think Canadians are known for being team players, for being respectful, for being in it not just for themselves, but willing to look out for the betterment of others as well. And I think that's the message that Canadians took around the world, and that's the message I think we want to portray to the world. That's who I believe we are.
Those are the values we have to ensure that we instill in the citizens of our country.
Right, because when you lose it, you have autocracy. Remember, in an uncivil, completely, remember, we can have uncivil people in our society, and as leaders, it's okay. But as long as we, collectively, we have to be very cognizant of that slide towards incivility, because I want you to think of an autocrat. Just think of an autocrat and see whether, you look at those behaviors there and look where those rights and freedoms actually
There are
go.
none.
There are none. So I like your good point, Karen, thank you. And Dee, because you just rock.
All right,
Yeah.
Dee always
I
rocks.
know she does.
All right, one last question, and then I'll take it to the audience, and we've probably got time for a couple more questions. Right? Okay, here it is. Knowing what you know today, would you step up to serve your country again, knowing once again that you might be called on to make the ultimate sacrifice, and why?
Absolutely, totally, without
I
a
let the
doubt.
doyen go first.
And in fact, if they call me tomorrow, I'd be down doing whatever they need me to do. Because I always, ask yourself, what have I done for me today, for my family today, for my community today, and for my country today? And what do I have to be thankful for today? I'd go right now. I'm ready.
Yeah.
I think many people who are now veterans can tell you how hard it is to transition, no matter how hard it was for you to leave, even if under the worst circumstances. It's a very unique position. We know that people who transition with medical conditions that don't allow them to serve any longer, if I coulda, shoulda, woulda, all of those regrets. And while it may be cult-like in my statement there, I think it's part of belonging to something for the greater good. I recognize my privilege in what I'm doing now, but there's something that I feel a little loss inside of me. Yes, I would serve again, even if they take me with my gammy thumbs and my knocky knee. I would serve again, and I respect Canadians' choices to serve or not to serve, but I would like to be there for you, and I think I share that sentiment with many of my fellow serving members and veterans.
The one thing that's really cool is through service to a higher purpose. It lasts a lifetime. 40 years. That lady in the back of the room, 1980, came through Moose Jaw as a student pilot.
Woohoo!
When I was the course director. Like, your friendships last a lifetime.
Yeah.
You don't have to say anything. You've been through common trials and tribulations. You know you've all volunteered to be willing to put your lives on the line. You've trusted each other with each other's lives, other people's lives at some point. And there is a fraternity, a sorority, a camaraderie there that blood cannot break it.
And I've met some of the bravest people I will ever come across, ever in my life.
Yeah.
Bravery in the truest traditional, I've just read a really good novel, sense, and they are walking amongst you as humble leaders, whether they are corporals or they are generals. And the little acts of heroism, right down to things that maybe one day they'll write a book about it, and that's also pride, right? Anyway, we're waxing poetic here. Karen,
No,
over
but
to
that's
you.
beautiful. Well, hey, I'm just enjoying myself. You guys keep talking. This is good. Now, we've got time for a couple of questions. If anybody would like to ask a question. Oh, good, then I get to. Oh, okay.
Oh,
One
yeah,
hand went up.
sure,
Go
bring
for
it
it.
on, Breek.
Go ahead.
It won't be what you guessed. We are Cold War, so to me, one of the important parts that hasn't come up at all is about space. Canada, of course, has a very
I meant to talk
important
about space.
history during the Cold War
Yes.
of being the third country ever in space. And today, in case anyone isn't aware, is history happened today. We had a commercial
That's it.
space flight that was 100% civilian funded with 2 EVAs, 2 spacewalks. So the things that were historically only done by the military are now being done by civilians. And I'm just curious, especially on the space level, do you have any comments about Canada and space, but also this role that's changing of things that were always military are now civilian?
Would you like me to hit that one?
Yeah, go for it.
It's only because that was what I was just doing up in Alaska and Seattle. But your point is actually really good. And I'm going to use NATO because that is our strongest alliance right now, is that pretty much anything we need to do, because technology is so gobsmackingly expensive, and in a capitalist society, you don't just, create an ooby-dooby whatever for space for one single application. So even within NATO, they're looking at dual purpose and looking at military civilian dual use, but keep it fairly exclusive. So whether it's satellite systems, whether it's how we defend through space, and where Canada is going to go, I mean, I obviously I don't have any gross sense, but if I was to talk from Rebecca's perspective, I always see that, Canadian Space Agency is going to retain the lead, and we're going to be in partnership with key allies. And never forget who we share a continent with, because you can have military partnerships and stuff. So we know that Space Force is flying, and we do have that within the RCAF now, and it is another domain, yet another domain. And as we tell the young kids who are joining today, that you are going to have jobs that none of us can think of. There already are. I mean, who thought? Why do you need to be in a uniform to operate a drone from middle of Ottawa? And what we need are people who are the best at what they do. So I think your point is really good, that dual-use technology is going to be critical, but what is going to be even more important is, as we look at it, as Canada, how do we regulate it so we protect ourselves? Because remember, the civilian side is never quite as secure as the military side. So yes, I had forgotten that was what today was.
All right. So I'm going to give you each a couple of minutes
Oh, Lord. Okay.
to kind of say your piece. Say what would you like to convey to our audience here and to the people of Canada? What would you like them to remember as they walk away from this event? Dee, you want to start?
Lord, Tonder Jesus, boys, that's a hard one. I don't know. I guess what I've learned in life in general is, and it was funny, I was thinking about this today, driving to work for God knows what reason. We come into this world and we live life. So what is that whole process? I always explain it as we come as a package of potential. And through the process of living, we are revealing or realizing or coming to understand our potential. You didn't know you could do something before you did it. You had the little train to think I can. Then once you did it, what's next? And there is no end to the what's next. It matters not age, physical ability, mental ability. Ask yourself when you get up in the mirror in the morning and say, what potential have I not yet realized? Because I want to go screaming in the home plate in the coffin, having expended all of it, if that's possible, you know? But most of the time is not, because we don't realize that until you try something new or different or expand or, gee, what would happen if I did this? What would awaken the curiosity within? So once upon a time, I wish I had it done. Hey, look, once upon a time is now. So when listen to your own internal dialogue and ask yourself, gee, if there were no limitations, what would my heart say it is I want to do, I want to be, I want to learn? That would be mine.
Awesome. Thank you. Rebecca,
What was the question again?
what message would you?
Yeah, I was too busy listening. I'll take it to the macro, is that I think what the Cold War has shown us, that it wasn't just an absence of conflict. We know things were happening within there, that within democracies, we can have peace, we can have social progress, we can have prosperity. But what we need to learn moving forward is we can't not look backwards and fire and forget and destroy everything and move forward, or else we, and what we value the most, our democracy, our freedom, our right to choose, our right to be our authentic selves wherever we are, becomes at risk. And in doing that, I always hope that we also don't forget the people who choose to serve their countries. And I'm going to use the Canadian Armed Forces, but let me talk about the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and our police services, people who are willing to step up, but in particular members of the Canadian Armed Forces who have consistently, throughout time, given their lives for this very, very country. And so therefore, moving forward, I hope that we don't forget that we never lose sight that things are changing again. There is great change afoot. I think that was in Harry Potter. There's great change afoot right now, and that it is not comfortable to think about. But I actually believe that the power of Canadians and how cool we are and innovative with what we can do can make sure that as time continues to evolve, we can continue to live in a safe and secure country with enough status in the world that if it ever hits the fan, people are willing to step up and join us and protect our way of life.
No, I think that's awesome. So I'm going to close it now, and when I just wanted to thank the two of you.
And you too.
And because, you see, leadership means that you're here too, and we're all here together. And it's up to all of us to commit to do whatever we can do to protect opportunities for ourselves and for our fellow citizens and for our children. We all have a part to play. We've all played different parts. We've played different roles. So do you. But I would like to ask that when the time comes for you and you look in the mirror like Dee suggested, just how can I make a difference? How can I make things better? What can I do to protect this country and to protect its potential? And I think we can all make a difference. And I just wanted to say thank you for caring enough to come and joining us this evening. Thank you to Christine and Sean for hosting us this evening. Thank you for all of your work in the Diefenbunker, making it into the kind of place that we can come and have these kind of discussions. it matters a great deal. And I just wanted to say thank you all.
What a fantastic kickoff to our speaker series. So I just want to thank again MPP Karen McCrimmon, Senator Rebecca Patterson, and Brasseur once again for their time with us this evening for this panel discussion on women in Canada's Cold War military. Another round of applause, please. So that concludes the event for this evening. Our next speaker series will take place over Zoom on Thursday, October 17th, again at 7 p.m., where we will have Dr. Asa McKercher of St. Francis Xavier University with us to discuss Getting into Bed with the Elephant, Canada-U.S. Relations in the Early Cold War, a topic in advance of the U.S. election in November. In November, our third speaker series event on Thursday, November 14th, will be with Dr. Susan Colborn of Duke University, who will present on Canada and NATO, past, present, and future. So this concludes our first event in the 2024 speaker series at the Diefenbunker. I want to thank you all for attending this evening's talk to learn a little more about the Cold War and how its past is still with us today. Please join us at our upcoming events in October and November. Have a great evening.